Denmark, land of Vikings, land of Lego, land of pastries. But a colonial powerhouse, surprisingly, yes. While not as famous as the empires of Britain or Spain, Denmark-Norway carved its own path in the world. For centuries, this small Scandinavian nation held sway over a surprisingly vast colonial empire, stretching from the Caribbean to India. This is the story of their rise and fall, a tale often overlooked in the annals of history. Denmark's colonial history is a fascinating journey through time, full of ambition, exploitation, and ultimately the complexities of empire. It's a story that challenges our perceptions of this seemingly unassuming Nordic nation. Our story begins in 1397 with the Kalmar Union. This agreement brought together Denmark, Norway, and Sweden under a single monarch. Denmark emerged as the dominant power in this union. Norway, with its smaller population and less developed economy, became the junior partner. The Kalmar Union was a tumultuous period marked by constant power struggles and shifting alliances. Despite the internal tensions, it laid the groundwork for Denmark-Norway's colonial ambitions. With Norway's long seafaring tradition and access to timber and naval stores, the stage was set for overseas expansion. The 17th century witnessed Europe's great powers scrambling for colonies. This era, often referred to as the Age of Exploration, saw nations like Spain, Portugal, England, and France vying for dominance across the seas. They sought new lands, resources, and trade routes, driven by the promise of wealth and power. Denmark-Norway, not to be left behind, joined the race. Despite being a smaller power, they were determined to carve out their own colonial empire. The Danish East India Company was established to spearhead these efforts, sending ships to distant shores. Their strategy, however, differed from that of their rivals. While other European powers often sought to conquer and control vast territories, Denmark-Norway focused on establishing strategic trading posts. This approach allowed them to engage in commerce without the need for extensive military campaigns. Lacking the vast resources of England or France, Denmark-Norway focused on establishing trading posts and engaging in the lucrative, albeit morally reprehensible, slave trade. These trading posts became hubs of economic activity, facilitating the exchange of goods and slaves. Their colonial ventures took them to three main regions: the Caribbean, West Africa, and India. Each of these regions offered unique opportunities and challenges, shaping the Danish colonial experience in different ways. In the Caribbean, they established the Danish West Indies, a cluster of islands that would become central to their sugar production. The islands' plantations relied heavily on slave labor, producing sugar that was highly sought after in Europe. On the coast of West Africa, they established forts and trading posts like Fort Christiansborg, key nodes in the transatlantic slave trade. These forts served as points of exchange where slaves were traded for goods such as textiles, guns, and alcohol. And in India, they founded the trading post of Tranquebar, hoping to tap into the riches of the East. This outpost allowed them to trade in spices, textiles, and other valuable commodities, further expanding their influence and wealth. The Danish West Indies, comprising islands like St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix, quickly became the jewel in Denmark-Norway's colonial crown. The island's fertile soil proved ideal for growing sugarcane, a highly sought-after commodity in Europe. Plantations sprung up across the islands, worked by enslaved Africans brought over in horrific conditions on Danish ships. The wealth generated by the sugar trade fueled Denmark-Norway's economy. Grand palaces and stately mansions were constructed, testaments to the profits reaped from the backs of enslaved Africans. The sugar trade, however, came at a steep human cost. The brutal conditions on the plantations and the inhumane treatment of enslaved people stand as a dark chapter in Denmark's history. Section 5. The Treaty of Kiel, a Nation Divided. The Napoleonic Wars brought about a dramatic shift in Denmark-Norway's fortunes. Allied with Napoleon, Denmark found itself on the losing side of the conflict. The Treaty of Kiel in 1814 sealed Denmark's fate, stripping it of Norway, which was ceded to Sweden. Despite this territorial loss, Denmark managed to hold on to its overseas colonies. The Caribbean islands, the African trading post, and the Indian outpost remained under Danish control. This retention of colonies, even as they lost a significant part of their own territory, highlights the complex and often contradictory nature of colonial power dynamics. Section 6. The gradual decline of an empire. The 19th century witnessed the gradual dismantling of Denmark's colonial empire. This period marked a significant transformation in the global political landscape, as European powers began to re-evaluate their overseas possessions. The abolition of the slave trade in 1803 dealt a significant blow to the Danish West Indies economy, which had been heavily dependent on the labor of enslaved people. This legislative change was a part of a broader movement across Europe to end the inhumane practice of slavery. The islands, once a source of immense wealth due to their sugar plantations, became an economic burden. The decline in profitability led to a decrease in investment and interest from the Danish crown. The economic downturn was evident in the dilapidated state of colonial buildings and infrastructure. The once thriving plantations and trade hubs were now shadows of their former selves. In 1845, Denmark sold its possessions on the Gold Coast to Britain, marking a significant retreat from its colonial ambitions in Africa. This sale was part of a larger trend of European powers consolidating their territories. This transaction also marked Denmark's exit from the slave trade, as the Gold Coast had been a central hub for this grim enterprise. The British acquisition further solidified their dominance in the region. The Danish West Indies were eventually sold to the United States in 1917, a move that was influenced by strategic and economic considerations during World War I. This sale ended over 2 centuries of Danish colonial rule in the Caribbean, bringing a close to Denmark's era as a colonial power in the Western Hemisphere. Tranquebar, the lone outpost in India, had been sold to the British East India Company decades earlier in 1845, further signalling Denmark's retreat from its colonial endeavours. Section 7. Greenland and the Faroe Islands, a lasting legacy. While Denmark's colonial empire in the Caribbean, Africa and India has long since vanished, 2 territories remain linked to Denmark: Greenland and the Faroe Islands. Greenland, the world's largest island, and the Faroe Islands, an archipelago in the North Atlantic, were originally settled by Norse explorers over 1,000 years ago. Today, both Greenland and the Faroe Islands have a high degree of self-governance. They manage their own internal affairs, while Denmark retains control over foreign policy and defence. The relationship between Denmark and these 2 territories continues to evolve, reflecting the complex legacy of colonialism and the ongoing struggle for self-determination. Section 8. Reflecting on Denmark's colonial past. Denmark's colonial history is a story of ambition, exploitation, and ultimately the complexities of empire. It is a history that challenges our perceptions of this seemingly unassuming Nordic nation. While Denmark may not have been a colonial giant on the scale of Britain or Spain, its impact on the world stage should not be underestimated. Denmark's colonial past is intricately woven into its present. From the architecture of Copenhagen, built on the wealth of the sugar trade, to the diverse population that calls Denmark home, the echoes of empire are still felt today. Section 9. Uncovering hidden histories. The story of Denmark's colonial empire is a reminder that history is often written by the victors. The narratives we are familiar with are often those that have been passed down by those in power, leaving many voices unheard and many stories untold. It encourages us to look beyond the traditional narratives and uncover the hidden histories that have shaped our world. By delving into these lesser-known stories, we gain a more comprehensive understanding of our past and the forces that have shaped our present. What other stories lie buried beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed? Each artifact, each document, and each piece of evidence holds a fragment of a larger story waiting to be pieced together by those willing to look deeper. What can we learn from these forgotten chapters of the past? By examining these overlooked aspects of history, we can gain insights into the complexities of human experience and the interconnectedness of global events. As we delve deeper into Denmark's colonial legacy, we are forced to confront uncomfortable truths about our shared history. These truths challenge the glorified versions of the past and compel us to acknowledge the darker aspects of our heritage. We are reminded that the quest for empire, for power and profit, often came at a terrible human cost. The exploitation and suffering endured by countless individuals are a stark contrast to the prosperity enjoyed by the colonizers. It is a legacy that continues to resonate today, shaping our understanding of race, identity, and the enduring impact of colonialism. By acknowledging and learning from these hidden histories, we can work towards a more just and equitable future.